Doing that. There it is. Thanks so much. Thank you for being here and making time to be here with us. We are happy to see everyone, and I know that it's hard to find time as we near the end of the semester. I'm sure if it's anything like it is for us, you're doing all of the celebrating and end of year culminating activities while trying to prepare for all your summer activities and things to come for next year. So thank you for stopping for an hour to share time with us. We'll go ahead and get started with Tim.
Thanks, CC. A little exercise put us together here, and I think this will help with everything we're doing. I think about somebody you really admire, and not yourself, and think about three things about that person that you really admire, just in your mind. Three qualities. Okay, now think about somebody that you sort of don't admire. I'm being politically correct. And three qualities about that person. It's an exercise that Ben Franklin did. So it's got some legs to it. Here's the thing. The links in our chain of habits, they're either too light that we don't recognize them, or they're too heavy that we can't change them. Now that's what that means. Even though we know information that would make us better, like those three things that you admire about others, you can be those things if you want to be. But unless it's really strong, we won't change. We won't recognize that we're not making that change. Or if you're old like I am, the chances are very slim. Old dog, new tricks. So think about that again. The links in your chain of habits are either too light to recognize them that they need the change, or too strong that you can't change them. Something to think about. And why people don't change, even though we know we shouldn't ingest certain foods or certain things, we'll go ahead and do it until it becomes such a habit we can't change it. People with lung cancer who are smokers will continue to smoke because the habit overrides their own existence and health. That's a heavy one, but it'll all help us. Thanks, CC. Love you.
Thank you, Tim. Scott, what do you have for us tonight?
Good evening, everybody. So I've got to preface this by saying that for most of my career, I used an old model, which is what I would call creating dutiful students. And it wasn't until the end of my career that I discovered that there was a better way to do things. And if I could get a do-over, I would go back in time and try to do this. So hear me out here. Where there are all types of skills that educators are responsible for teaching, the rehearsal environment should not reflect like one person standing in the front of the room giving all the information out like arrows, right? It should be like a cloud where things are commingled and brought together. So the musicians are to be musically alive and not dutiful, which is what I did for the first part of my career. I created dutiful musicians. Making music is a collaborative process where students should be actively involved in creativity and imagination and wonderment and expression and emotion, beauty, shape, interpretation, right? All those things. And the director might say something like, we've done 3 different interpretations of this passage. Which one do you like and why? And if that happens, I always tried to make sure that when the student responded, that we made it good at that moment, right? The beauty of music is that we can recreate it again and again with different meaning and interpretation, the next day. But in that moment, it was the greatest musical thing. So how do we kind of get to that place? Well, first of all, if we build capacity and we build literacy, we can ask guided questions. And if we build capacity, then we get enlightened answers. I hope that makes sense. In other words, you can ask a guided question without building capacity, and you won't get it back very much, right? So we must first build literacy and artistic capacity in our students. So I had a student one time, and for Bobby Leonard McLeod, I had a student one time who asked, "Do you like the interpretation I did on the solo yesterday, or the interpretation that I did today?" And there wasn't an answer; it was just a discussion, and it allowed all of us to kind of commingle and collaborate in that moment, right? So the conductor elicits sounds from the players, and by the way, it's not what it looks like, it's what it sounds like, right? And then enlightened players bring an intuitive response to the music that establishes collaboration and commingling of ideas, much like chamber music. So there should be lots of musical communication and communication happening through the ensemble. And I really do believe that our music education profession has moved through various stages. And I think we are to that place where creating a space where students can be the best version of themselves. And when they're their best version of themselves, they can also be the best musician they can be. And then we create that environment where they can be collaborative and respond musically. So that's my tip, Cecilia.
That's fantastic, Scott. And I think that, when we use Tim's analogy about the heavy chains, those links in the chain, I think that we've had decades of really heavy links where it was interesting. Did you hear Scott say that the feedback from the teacher and the podium shouldn't be coming to the students like arrows? But I know that that's how I received information as a student. Yeah, Tim, I'm sure, right? I'm sure Ravelli was really warm and fuzzy, right? Yeah, he never delivered any arrows from the podium. Oh, did you have something to say about that? I think this is it's a worthwhile conversation right now, especially because this month we're focused on teacher feedback. So what does that look like? How do we get quality product that we're looking for while delivering a feedback that is intentional and meaningful and can be constructive?
I guess, Scott, I'm curious as to what year in your teaching did that shift, and what did that look like? Was it a hard right and you just changed everything, or did you just let it organically seep in?
It was probably 18 years into my teaching, my 18th or 19th year, I would say.
So
And
there's still hope for me, you're saying?
well, and the reality is, there was just a realization on my part that that there might be a better way. And ironically, it happened after the Midwest performance. Ironically. So, yeah. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I mean, we always did a great job of building capacity, but like I said, the students would do anything you asked them to do, right? But when you drop that pebble in the water and you create those ripples and allow them to just come into the space, and what happens in that space between this and the musician, that's where, yeah, that's where it happens. Yep.
Bobby, I think you're right on. I don't know if everyone has the chat open. Do you want to speak to that a little bit? Because I certainly wasn't having this conversation with other colleagues 15 years ago.
Yeah, I was saying that, for Scott to say that took 18 years is actually pretty brave, because that sounds like that's a long time. And teacher years, those of you should know, that's like dog years. That's like basically 2 cycles through. But nobody was talking about this. I know when I started teaching, it was not what's the emotional reaction or the emotional connectivity with the students. It was, is this note right or wrong? Is it in tune or out of tune? Do we have the right marching band show? Are we raising enough money? I mean, like, maybe you all went to different schools, and I don't think anybody was doing it incorrectly. We just didn't know. It wasn't as important. And Tim Lotzenheiser was only getting started with really becoming influential in what's going on. Nobody had ever really talked about that or thought about it. Really, Tim was, I mean, like, I don't know that people were talking about it before you did. So I think that there was a major cultural shift 15, 20 years ago that really And it took a while, didn't it, Tim? You started doing that. You started talking, doing talks around the 80s. But I think it took a while for people to think, oh, he's talking to more than just the kids.
Well, and
Oh,
I
he
was
put,
guilty. I was guilty of being a dictator because you're right, Bobby. That's what we knew how to do and what we learned how to do. And Scott, those were the tools we had. So
yeah.
And
get
yet
that
there's still
badge
a
on.
value of walking into a rehearsal room, a perceived value, and seeing the kids dutifully listen and not, there's no conversation. They listen quietly. They do whatever the director tells them. That there's still people who value that to the point of that just sucks all the air out of what Scott just mentioned, which
Yeah.
letting them dialogue, letting them have some conversation, have the rehearsal be a little bit boisterous, for lack of a better word. I guess that's why I continue to scratch my head like we've made progress, but we haven't made progress.
Cultural and musical ownership.
And it sometimes can be difficult for the students, not just the teacher, to let go. If walking into a program where that was not the culture, when I ask my students, I invite my students to be a part of the process and have those conversations, it's still very awkward. They have not gotten to a point where they've established those kind of trusting relationships to be vulnerable enough to say, I actually just think that this is what needs to happen, because they don't want to offend anyone. They don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And it took us a lot of time in the past year to really invest in building those kinds of relationships and getting everyone to understand that when we're sitting in this ensemble, we're not out to hurt anyone's feelings. We're really just trying to bring out the best in the music. And there are still some students that really struggle with that. And so if any of you have programs where that's something that's alive in your program, I think that all of us would love to hear more about that. And I think the conversation about how do we give that feedback is something that we want to continue. And I know that yesterday I happened to be together with Taylor and David Vanderwalker and young Kim, and the four of us are going to be presenting together at Midwest about creating their space. And that's part of our conversation right now, that, how do we give them that sense of ownership, and not just in the social activities that happen outside of rehearsal. How do we build in that sense of ownership in the rehearsal setting? So definitely a conversation worth continuing. Julie, please.
And also, like, these last couple of weeks with all the testing, so like we lose band class to do the testing, and so they have to go do all this stuff that we just said we don't want them to do, which is sit there and be quiet, take the information, do the test. And then they come back to us, and it's almost like you have to run band camp again, because they can't just change modes like immediately. I mean, neither can we, but they can't shift that fast.
So true. So very true. Well, Brian, yes.
I think one way to get to that point where they have that cultural ownership is asking questions early on. And I think that was one way I was blessed when I was student teaching. Mr. Whitwell was my cooperating teacher, and he was observing me, and I still have his notes. And he said, I like the way you're asking questions and guiding them towards the answer instead of giving them the answer. And if we ask questions, and as long as we make it a safe place, and that they have the freedom to answer, and then we don't zing them if they get it quote unquote wrong. If we say there is no wrong answer, this is interpretive, we give them that freedom, then there's more and more buy-in. I found that the later I got in my teaching, the kids were more and more scared. Maybe it was COVID or whatever, but they were so much more reserved and didn't want to express. And maybe it's got something to do with social media. If you express your true feelings on social media, you're going to get blasted. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, or what side of religion you're on, or whatever. You're going to get blasted by somebody. So I think, you know, asking those questions and then giving them permission to have a different idea than what you had, or a different idea than what Susie had. And that's okay. There's more than one way to do music.
Absolutely. You know, and Chad put something in the chat about training our admin, right? Because if they aren't just sitting there quietly, dutifully, then do they think that that you've lost control of your classroom when there's that sort of chaos, perceived chaos? Yeah. Thank you for sharing that as well. Well, this is a great conversation, and you know that I'm always going to encourage you. We see conversations on the Book of Face all the time in those great big groups. We have a Slam private, you know, group for just our members. Continue those conversations, and I know a few weeks ago I gave you a hard time about we don't have to stop talking when the hour is up on Sunday nights. Share each other's phone numbers, so that you can continue these conversations, because it is something really special about Slam, the community that we're building. So I want to welcome to our Slamily tonight a new member of the family. So, because that's the thing, Eddie, once you're here, you're always going to be family. And Eddie and I have known each other for a while. Bobby and Eddie and I were together in Mishawaka. I don't even remember what year it was. Do you do it? Do you remember?
2016, 2016, almost
2016,
a decade ago. Yes.
right? I just remember it being a frozen tundra,
Yes.
right? All of us Southerners got invited to Mishawaka, which is really cool, by the way. If you ever get the invitation, do not hesitate. Go and walk around. It is amazing. Enjoy the time with Tim and the whole team there, and meet everyone. Just incredible artists and craftsmen in the Conselmer family. But I met Eddie at that particular event, and we just kind of loosely stayed in touch, and over the years have become, I would consider Eddie a good friend, and someone that I know what he has done in the classroom and what he will continue to do for music education is really going to change not just the landscape for us as music educators, but he's really making a difference in children's lives. And so I will tell you, he's currently a PhD student, right? But that is
Okay.
after at the University of Miami. So he's in the Frost School of Music, but that's after what, 20 plus years in the classroom.
20 years.
Yeah. And I told everybody last week, Eddie, I said, he's done it all, right? So he's taught band and orchestra, marching band, indoor winds, jazz band, music
Choir.
theory, general music, all the things, right?
Yeah.
So it's super excited to have him with us, because he's kind of walked in all of our shoes. And he is really highly regarded for his expertise in supporting special learners, but from a very, very unique perspective. So please join me in welcoming Eddie Ercilla.
Thank you all. Thank you so very much. And I appreciate that introduction. I'm like, wow, that sounds pretty awesome already. And such. But yes, my name is Eddie. I am a 20-year veteran in the music education world. I'm currently a second-year PhD student. I'm a glutton for punishment. And I decided to go back to school and learn some more, and hopefully take it up a level and research and advocate and do what I do. So a little bit about myself. You know, I was listening to you all talk about some of your input on leadership and what music education should look like. And I'm thinking to myself, yes, finally, because yes, this discussion is new. It has not been happening at all. As a matter of fact, it's never happened in my entire journey. I unfortunately share with my colleagues and in my sessions, I am a product of everything that was wrong with music education. I am that product, and I'm not supposed to be here. And I say that loud. I'm not supposed to be here. And for what most people don't know, I am severely and profoundly deaf. I wear hearing aids. I'm one step away from cochlears. The only reason why I do not wear cochlears is because it's an invasive procedure that makes my music capability permanently reduced because of the fact that is implanted into my skull. And usually the next remark after I say I'm not supposed to be here, I'm deaf and profoundly deaf and all that is, but you don't sound deaf. You don't speak deaf. And so, yes, I know I am a product of very early intervention in my life. Parents who got me the best resources. I was speech developmentally delayed until about the 7 or 8 years of age. So I talk a lot now to make up for those first 7 years of life when I didn't speak very much. I speak very plentiful as a result. So aggressive speech therapy, aggressive intervention, and a lot of music. Music is what got me learning to speak and communicating with the world and such. And I cannot express that enough. That is more than just an activity, but for me, it's a way of being, it's a way of feeling, and to communicate. As a matter of fact, I would use rhythms to learn phonetics, to therefore go back to speech therapy and learn vowels and sounds and words and such. You know, when you talk about triplets and you go triplet, 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 I teach my kids to go strawberry, 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 and all kinds of articulations and phonetics. And yes, I'm teaching articulation and I'm teaching rhythm and we're teaching pacing and we're teaching all these little connections, right? And you go, wow, that's impressive teaching. I'm going, no, I'm teaching you how to communicate with me. And using how I communicate with me, you can use that to communicate with others through the music that we make. So when I say I'm not supposed to be here, that's entirely what I mean. And for some that get offended, I apologize, but no, I'm not sorry, because we need to make it aware that everyone, that your actions, your words, you matter. Everything you do will have a profound effect to your students. Everything you say, every way you act, any manner that you interpret, you can have a very lasting and profound impact on that child, whether you know it or not. I make that conscious effort to be as impactful as I can, but some are just not aware that their actions are creating these results as a result of that. Early on, I've always wanted to play music. As early as age 4, I would sneak away from my parents in a store and find a piano shop and just sit on the piano as a kid. I remember at one time I disappeared, my parents going ballistic looking for me, but they found me in the piano shop in a Westland Mall in Hialeah in Miami. I'm a Miami native, still in Miami and all. Land of the croqueticas and patelitos, you know. Oh yes, I know it's delicious. But nonetheless, I would disappear and you would find me in a piano shop and I would play and I would bang on the keys and then, I would like put my feet up against, and I just loved the way it felt. It just felt good. I didn't know what it sounded like. And to this day, folks, I can't tell you what music sounds like, but I can tell you what it feels like, how you touch that, how you interact with it, how it makes your little hairs stand up. When you call it goosebumps, I call it sensation of the whole body being and musical experiences and such. And so my parents, knowing that I could not hear very well, they saw that I was attracted to that. So they gave me my first little keyboard, my little Casio keyboard. I still remember that. And I would spend hours with that thing on my face. And I would just play and I would just feel it. And I would walk around with that and I would teach myself songs based on what I felt and what I heard. And before you knew it, I was memorizing music. I was teaching myself how to play. So I took my first piano lessons, and before you know that, I was playing Mozart piano sonatas at age 6 and 7 and playing complex stuff. I was advancing quickly, barefooted, and with my piano all opened up and such. And that's how my training started. And the more I got into it, the more it just felt good. And I wanted to be a pianist because it just felt so awesome to do that. I played in middle school band because someone told me I couldn't do that. It was impossible. How dare you? So I played trumpet because it was loud and obnoxious. Kind of fits the personality of a trumpet player, doesn't it? Just pretty natural. Love it. But I just love the way it felt on my face. You can feel it in your mouth. You can feel it on your lips. You can feel it in your hands. And the more someone told me no, the more I wanted to do it. I'm very stubborn, very, very stubborn, and that the more they said no, the more angry I got and the more determined I wanted to just prove everyone wrong. And I'm telling you, I had band directors tell me to quit. I've had teachers tell me to drop out. I even went to the college level. I made it all the way to college, full scholarship, for the professors to tell me, we made a mistake, you should quit, kind of deal. I mean, I've heard it, I've been there, I've seen it, and my goal as an educator is to be everything that my teachers weren't. So yes, they motivated me to become the teacher so I can be the one that they never were, if that makes sense. Because I strongly feel and I truly believe that my negative experiences should not be something that anybody else should have to endure. And I go out of my way teaching philosophy wise to ensure that my students have an experience that is impactful in one way or shape or form that is meaningful to them. If it's a trophy, great. If it's that band trip, great. If it's because of the interaction of friends, great. But most importantly, what drives my philosophy as I was listening to your conversations now and your wording, I think leadership and all the tenets you're talking about for these past couple of months revolve one central line theme and aspect of things, and that is predominantly to give your students a voice. They need to have a voice and not just answering questions and doing tasks that you give them, play this piece, play it back like machines, but they have a voice on how to play it, how to participate with it, how do we engage with that. They have a voice in making a group-wise decision in terms of, maybe a democratic process to the music making. They have a voice in including others in ways that they might not have otherwise been included. I'm talking inclusion, it's a dirty word now, given our state of affairs. But I say that proudly, diversity, inclusion, because I'm the one that has been excluded for so long, and so many else like me, visually, hearing, autism, you name it, because they look at us as a problem. They look at us as an inconvenience. I can tell you right now how many colleagues will tell you, oh man, I have to accommodate a child. What's that going to do to my performance group or my Midwest ensemble or my top tier Carnegie Hall? How am I going to work this in? And that shocks me still to this day. You mean to tell me that you have to go out of your way for me because I am going to be a threat to your ensemble? Then you're probably not in the same realm of what a teacher should be. I remember someone telling me something about Dr. Madsen actually saying something about the token system. Some programs, they like all these trophies. And sometimes the problem with the token system is the fact that the token becomes the it. So what is it motivating you now? Is it the reward that you get for that performance? Or is it the interaction and the musical experiences and such? So I was the one that never got a band trophy. I'm okay with that. And so as long as my kids were happy and we were performing and they were playing music that they enjoyed and we were communicating and we were doing stuff that was as meaningful as possible. Do we have the traditional music settings and such? Absolutely. But for me, it was about the engagement. And that's how I see this whole leadership package. They had a voice. We talk about accommodations a great deal in my classrooms. I talk about that through my disabilities courses, and I talk about that through sessions and PDFs and workshops and whatnot. And in that, we talk about accommodating, but a lot of the times when you accommodate, you're not including me still. You made space for me, but I'm not part of that space, if that makes sense. Okay, so you put me in, but I still have no voice. And if I still have no voice, despite your attempt or effort to accommodate me, you have still excluded me. It's still exclusion. So what was the value in that other than to just say, oh, they're here? I'll give you a very visual example, very abrupt. A choir and the person in a wheelchair on the side of the choir. Doesn't get any more visual than that if you see a picture. You see this beautiful group and then this isolated poor child sitting by themselves in a wheelchair on the side somewhere, just being, as opposed to perhaps maybe integrating the choir around them and integrating the child within. See, that would have been real inclusion. Accommodating was they're sitting on the stage with the group, but being part on the same plane of performance or on the same level with a voice is to be truly embedded into the structure. And that is a cultural mindset. That is a framework mindset. That is a way of being and such. So a lot of the stuff that I do and interact with, I do it from the aspect of I come with that disability perspective and such. How would I want to feel within the ensemble? How would I want to be seen as within the ensemble? I know I cannot hear music. I have my issues. So I find ways to do that, right? I have all kinds of toys and gadgets in my sessions and whatnot, because it's what I do to communicate, like my smartwatch for communication. I have metronomes that tap on my wrist and on me, that the Soundbrenner Coral Duo. I don't know if some of you may be familiarized with those kinds of toys, but visual stuff that helps me communicate. so that I can reach out to my students. Sometimes my students say, "Hey, Mr. E has all these toys, has all these gadgets." And I'm like, "Yeah, I have to, and it's expensive so that I can talk to you, so that I can reach you, and I can do what I can to accommodate you." And so if I can't communicate, then our relationship is pretty much useless because I'm in the people business, right? We're all in the people business. You're there to work with younger people. You're turning them into viable, fully functional human beings. Our methods to do that is through the musical outlet. Within that, they learn performance, but yes, they learn discipline. They learn how to function in society. They learn democratic ways. They learn, this what is considered to be human norms. We are that kind of impact. We're more than just music and such. And so I take great pride in all of that. So, I mean, there's so much I can talk about and mention, but I wanted to this just be a conversation of some things that you might be wondering about or curious that comes to mind, what you think this would entail, or what's it like to incorporate students with disability, or how do you provide that voice to your students? What methods do you do that is a conscientious effort to reach out and ensure that your students have a voice? And how do you confirm if they do have that voice? Because I say I do X, Y, and Z, and they say A, B, and C, but are they really listening? Are they really understanding? Are they still being included? How do we encompass all of that? Anybody have any thoughts if you want to jump in, or kind of, I'm curious in the dialogue. Miss Brenda.
So I had several students. One boy who's autistic. I did not know how to work with an autistic student at the time, but I had his parents, and obviously nobody else wanted him. Because then I get the phone call, "Oh, Brenda, you'll be good to work with Danny," but they did not know how to handle him. And yet I said, well, this is a kid that wants to learn. So it took a while because it's the trust factor. So until he trusted me, because a child who is autistic, granted, he was pushed around, whatever, in school. So it took the trust factor, which I had his parents stayed with me the entire time. So because I kept going, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Because you don't know, especially if you haven't been taught. Uh, the trust was there because he wouldn't even look at me, talk to me, nothing at all. But it takes time, and you have to be willing to take the time to work with this child. And in the long run, it was great. It was wonderful. He started not only playing drums for me, but he wanted to play his piano stuff, and then he wanted to sing. And so or he wanted to do his backup singing for whatever song we were doing. But it was all great. I also had another student that did everything with her feet. She joined the band, she joined the choir. She was, oh gosh, pitch wise, she could tell you if you were out of tune because she had perfect pitch. She was in all-state choir. Now you're putting it to a situation like that. And all I needed for somebody was just to hold the music so she can see the music and see the conductor. And I just told her, I said, I'm here, but I'm not going to get in your way unless you need me. And she just did everything, and it was great. Um, she's wonderful. All I can say. But I know other hands are up, but you just have to have time and patience and learn from them. And it's amazing what you can get out of them and be able to share with other students. But give them their chance to show what they can do, because other students are like, "Oh, but I want to help." No, 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 no. They don't want you to help. They want you to be their friend. And as long as you're their friend, everything's going to be fine. But anyway, that's all I have to say.
You brought off three great points. I know we have hands up for a second, just give me a second, but there are three great points that you kind of made and accentuate now from a disability perspective. Teachers, we have a hard time trusting teachers with what used to be seen as a problem, and we get tossed around from place to place to place to place. Figure out what to do with this child, and as a person who's been there can say, why am I going to bother with this when I'm going to get kicked out and sent somewhere else? right? We're not seen as someone without any issue. We're just seen as another problem we have to accommodate. You see me as an accommodation, and until we see that communication barrier break down with that other person saying, wow, this one cares about me, this one wants me to try, then that trust factor is not there. One of those, that's one thing, right? From a disabled perspective. I guess I break that barrier pretty quickly when they see my hearing aids and stuff like that. Oh, he's one of me. And so, there's that instant connection. But I tell you that because I took from my experiences with that as a disabled person myself. Secondly, you mentioned the student who was able to play with her feet, you said, and she has perfect pitch. Okay, can't use her hands, but you can use your feet. And they go, wow, that's inspirational. They're playing with their feet. They're subscribing to adversity, and they're succumbing, they're thriving and surviving. What an inspiration. I hate that. We're not here to inspire you. Okay. Our normal is whatever normal we were born with. Her normal was being able to function with her feet, either to perform, to walk, to eat her food, do her stuff because of her limitation. My normal is everything without my ears, right? So I can still listen, I can still hear, I can still function through my skin, through my touch, through my vision, through communication. This doesn't work. Anatomically, it does. It's just the neurological connections are broken. It's sensory neural for me. I can't change that. So, I call that deaf gain. Basically, my loss is actually my gain because we listen and hear through other mechanisms of stuff. So disability is not a disadvantage. When they see that from that way, it's not a disadvantage. You have a wheelchair, but they can still sing, they can still play, they can still speak, they can still communicate. They may not be able to walk. I can't hear, but I can still talk, I can still see. Someone who's blind can still hear, maybe can talk, can do other things. Right? Our disability is not our disadvantage. And once we start breaking down that barrier, you're going to start seeing your students in a different way. The students will start seeing you in a different way. Now, what does that mean for instruments and equipment? Well, that's where you need to kind of get creative. We have so much technology today that can make that possible, from an iPad to smart devices, AI, anything you think of it, it's there. I'm this guy that will show up to a band MPA and a judge will get really upset with me where I need a bassoon part played and I have an iPad and one of those touch sensitive keyboards for my student who has tactile disabilities and stuff. And so I gave her this little keyboard. She plays the part for me. It sounds like a real bassoon, but the judge says, sorry, you're disqualified because there's no real bassoon player playing there, but the part is being played. So what matters more, the actual instrument or the fact that there was a child making the music on stage to the best of her ability and she was having a grand old time and with that regard, right? So our priorities change with those kinds of things too. And the other thing is, just because we are disabled doesn't mean that we can't accomplish. I have perfect pitch. To the frequency of A440, because they're like, how is this possible? You're deaf, you can't hear. I know I can't hear. Stop telling me that. I can feel A440. I can feel intonation. I can tell you when it's off. I can tell you when it's not together. Don't you teach your kids how to listen to the sound waves when it clashes, when it's out of tune? And don't you hear it? I can feel it. I can feel the waves on my skin. I can feel that rattling. I can feel that. That's how my sensitivity is. And then they go, well, how do you do it with an ensemble? Okay, I cheat a little bit. I use this thing called tonal energy on my smartphone. And I kind of leave it on my podium with my little iPad and everything. And it tells me smiley face, no smiley face. So if there's no smiley face, something is wrong. And so I'll find it. And I'll go, oh, I'm diagnosing. What a good tactician. He's diagnosing. No. I'm finding my problem so I can feel it in the general direction. But it's part of the tactician part as well, right? So my point here is we're not broken. We function in a very different way. Every student functions in a very different way. That mechanism might not be the traditional means, but with further understanding, we're able to better accommodate our students to the point where they are actually included in this conversation, if that makes sense. I keep coming back to that because accommodation is not inclusion. You have to take step one, know the kid, accommodate, and then find ways to make them included in a meaningful action. And all that's part of your leadership qualities to go with it. Inclusion of all, not just the broken, apparently the broken, right? So thank you for bringing up those points, because those are all characters that I see on a day-to-day basis on there, and people aren't aware that this is happening. And you'd be surprised with a little bit of mindfulness and being aware of those little things that will dramatically change how you would view students in general and how your programs would develop. I know my friend Franco over here has his hand up for a little while. He's been very patient. Carlos, go ahead.
Hello, can everybody hear me okay?
Perfect.
Excellent. Hi, Eddie. Good to see you again. Our schools used to be down the street from each other,
Yeah.
and now I live in Georgia, and it's good to see you again. And it's good to be part of this conversation. This year, I had the I've had a very successful career, and my philosophy has always been music for all equals music from all. And uh, to me, that means that when I look at my student body in my band room, um, it ought to look the way that my school looks like. As a clinician and as a judge and as an adjudicator, I've been to so many band rooms and so many programs where the makeup of the of the of the population of the program does not match the makeup of the population of the school. Um, to me, that it also has to include the makeup of the population of your ESC population. For example, at Parkview High School, where I teach at, we're the Center for the Visually Impaired in Gwinnett County, which is great. And this year we had our first blind student. He's not the first blind student that's ever played an instrument, and he's not the first blind student that's ever played in a band or in an orchestra, but he's certainly the first band student that has been blind at Parkview High School. And we have the visually impaired center in in the county. So, you know, the school is old, and I think it really resonated when Brenda said that you have to learn from your students, um, and the environment that we set is this student is bright. He's an incredible musician. He's got a great ear. He can play just about anything that you put in front of him as long as it's brailled. Um, and and he wanted to join the marching band, and our staff and our band parents and our everybody's like, how's he going to do that? He's blind. And we're like, well, we got to figure it out. It's what are we going to do? We can't put him on a prop and just move the prop around for him. We can't just say that he's going to be in the front ensemble because he can't see. We have to figure out how we're going to make this happen. And you know, it took us longer to figure that out, but part of figuring it out was standing next to him at rehearsals, and asking him, like, how do you process this? Like, how do you feel this? And you know, he's completely blind. His his eyes have no way. His nervous system has no way of processing light. So so he's 100% blind. Um, and after everything is said and done, this kid is our best marcher on the field, you know. And I think that happens. And you know, he marches a regular drill spot. He moves around the field with the rest of the band, and the process takes a little bit longer, but it's about getting with the student and learning how they learn. It's I've always been brought up to with the idea that every kid learns, every kid can learn. Maybe they can't learn at the same time or at the same pace as everybody else around them, but every kid can learn. So to me, it was a very it was a very fun process because I had to learn how to do my job differently, and I had to learn how to do my job better. And I had to do And the rest of the band, they learned from him as well. I think another part of this inclusion business is we tend to think that the population around that student, or that smaller group of students that needs to be included or that should be included, is going to react negatively. We make that assumption. And I think that leads to some of the friction that makes it difficult to include all students of all ways of life into our programs, is that we assume that everyone else who's normal is going to react negatively to that one kid. And I can tell you for a fact that it's not the case. A lot of times, we always say band kids are the best kids, orchestra kids are the best, and music kids are the best kids, and it's true. So when that happens, when they're met with the opportunity to do something new and to teach someone who's different, and who has a different set of skills, in my experience, 9 times out of 10, they rise to the occasion to see, hey, how can we support this kid to be a part of our family? So to me, it was a new experience, because we're teaching marching, we're teaching a caption of the activity that's titled visual. Like, how do we do this? How do we teach this person how this is supposed to look? But the good thing is that the students' proprioceptive ability is far beyond some of what other kids around him are able to do. And so we learned that whatever we were telling him, this is what sensation we're going with. A lot of times his visual impairment became a sort of a springboard for him to understand everything, because he doesn't have the visual distraction of what it's not supposed to look like. He doesn't have the visual distraction of what it's not supposed to sound like. He has this very clear picture in his mind of what it's supposed to look like, what it's supposed to sound like, how things are supposed to work, and he goes for it 100%. And also, he has a group of kids around him that really care about him and that really want to help him be successful. So I'm gonna stop blabbering, because
Well, you hit the nail on the head on a lot of things, and it's like I said, I hear these stories all the time. They're not uncommon to me, and there's a lot of great things happening, But the thing here is, many view this as, oh, look at this wonderful thing that happened, and not something that is just going to happen because they're human, just like everyone else. That's the thing. The thing is that I want to be part of something without being, and I never wanted the attention, for example. I hate being called out. I don't want people to know. I just want to be part of the group. Don't, oh, he's part, because don't, just let me be. Let me be with my people. Let me just mingle. Let me be part of the crowd, and stuff. But yes, you did hit the nail on the head on this other thing that you mentioned, that it takes us longer to learn. It takes us longer to do. Remember, people with disabilities, we're taught to how to function in a normal world. Our therapy is so that we can function in a normal world. We have to go extra mile and then some so that we can function in your normal, quote unquote, normal world. Why doesn't the normal world get taught to train in ours instead? Why can't we just teach them to interact better with us in that way? Why is it that we have to go out of our way? And that's usually because of the whole disability studies and framework, how we have to be accommodating to everyone else because we're the ones with the problems, not them. And that goes back centuries and such with that idea and main thought frame. And it's horrible what's happening right now in our current political timescape with everything that's happening. But my point here is I have to bask. I have to figure out what you're saying. How am I going to process it? Then I got to teach myself. Then I got to go ahead and replicate it. Then I got to do it for you. It's not right. Okay, well, I got to go back and repeat the 10,000 steps over and over again. And it may take me an extra 3 months to do it, but eventually it gets done. right? And so disability does not mean, or people that struggle with your content doesn't mean that they're not capable. It's just, you just need another avenue. We just need more time to grow so that we're allowed to do things and we can do things with you. We need educators that are empathetic and that are patient and that are accommodate and that talk to us, ask us, hey, how does this work for you? I don't care if I have to tell you how my hearing aids work. Ask, hey, do you sign or how do you communicate? What works best for you? What can I do? If I have a child in a wheelchair, for example, what makes you most tired? What kind of activities should we do? What's best works best for you? What doesn't work best for you? How do we maneuver your strengths without highlighting any of your weaknesses on the side? How can I make you and you better? How can I make you improve or you succeed? Right? We want success for all students, not just our normal kids, right? I want success for everyone. And we call that what? Cross-curricular, multimodal intelligence and mode of progress, and all these buzzwords. I get lost with all these educational buzzwords. But the point is, we're people. They're people. They all deserve the same opportunities to succeed. How we do that depends on, our restrictions and resources, but they're there, I know Miss Jaden had her hand up for a while. She's been so patient. So sorry.
Don't apologize. Everything that
No.
you've been saying is just wonderful. I'm a sponge in these situations. But the question that I wish to ask you, Mr. E, is a long-winded one, so I will try and narrow it down. But I'm currently a student at Georgia State University, and we being me, I'm currently in a class that teaches us some strategies and typical characteristics for helping those with disabilities.
Mhm.
And you being brought in today has helped me think a lot about the language that we use surrounding disability, especially being
Yes.
somebody who is not disabled. I take a lot of really, really deep notes in that class because I know I'm going to inevitably end up teaching students that experience that. And so I ask you in this specific instance, with the specific language that we're using, to me, especially with the discussion you've started today, the word accommodation almost feels like it is accommodating a problem. If
Yes.
Yes. So if I
It's
am to
exactly that.
accommodate, that's awesome to hear. Not that context. If I'm to accommodate for a student, it is because I'm expecting an issue and the issue needs to be solved. And so instead, would you recommend using the word inclusion? Because inclusion is a more all-encompassing understanding of just making sure that they get to appreciate being in what you're doing.
There's nothing wrong with accommodation. The problem is most people see the word accommodation from what we call the medical model. For medical model of disabilities, where we're trying to fix the problem and cure. You can't cure my deafness. You can't cure autism. You can't cure a wheelchair-bound person or cerebral palsy or whatever the condition is. Our normalcy is our normalcy. You can't cure us. So when you try to accommodate us to make our problems less succinct or are better for us, you're actually making it worse. So if we go from a social model of inclusion, in that regard, it's more about the language, it's more about the inclusion aspect of accommodation, is the social aspect of the disabilities, and that could encompass a wide array of umbrellas here in terms of the inclusion. But the thing that matters the most is words that you use. For example, I can't stand hearing impaired. Impaired means broken. I'm not broken. It just doesn't work. I was born with something that just never worked. So how can I call it broken? It just doesn't work. I never used it. Now, if I say if I had it and then I lost it, okay, it broke. I broke it. I don't know what I did, but I broke it. Right. But I came out and my world was silent. I take my hearing aids out and my world is silent. So when my teenage boys are beating the daylights out of each other because they're being teenage boys, I sleep in peace because I took my hearing aids off and I'm good. Not good with the wife, by the way. Bad idea, bad idea, But nonetheless, my normalcy is that. So the social model is about the inclusion side more so than the accommodation, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to fix you. I'm trying to find a way to have you part of the conversation at your best attributes. And if you don't have those best attributes, we're going to accentuate those. And so that you become more confident and more participatory. And if that means you can only play 5 notes, they're going to be the proudest 5 notes you ever played with that confidence and pride. And I don't care if we can play the Shostakovich overture or not. If you only know those 5 notes and you play the living snot out of it, I am so proud of you. You overcame a barrier and you did this. And you did this with us and not me going, I'm just going to let you play those 5 notes and that's the only thing you can do. See, it's a very different way of thinking, right? They say, oh, just play these 5 things, don't get in my way. No, 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 make that mistake. I tell my kids all the time, if you're going to make a mistake, do it on tempo, do it loud, do it proud, do it right, do it with intention. And that's all that matters. And it's not a mistake. It was an intentional mistake, hopefully on tempo and the right rhythm, and we can recover and everything else, you know, for the adjudicators, right? So they can be happy. Start together, finish together, we stay together, regardless of how we're made up. Within that, for our unit, we are that entity. And I embed that culture with my students. And I do that because they know my strengths and they know my weakness. And they know that, for example, mid-evaluation MPA, my hearing aid, my worst nightmare, died. I was completely silent. We fell apart on that stage. And I would never forget the adjudicator who said, I had to learn how to listen to my ensemble, because if I can't do that, then I should really reconsider my profession. I never forget those words. Those were the words that sparked my journey to presenting around the country, to talk to fellow educators on how to approach students with disabilities and how to do inclusion and the whole model. And that sparked my whole academic pursuit through my PhD, doing disability studies and things. So it was a happy accident, but one that angered me in a way that opened up new opportunities and doors for me, and really to advocate with that regard. So, you know, part of that leadership is that. You know, I think about a quote that Reagan said once that said that the greatest leader is not necessarily the one who does the greatest things, but rather a great leader gets other people to do great things. Which means if I have to suffer and go through adversity so that you can do one thing better than I did, ladies and gentlemen, I did my job. That's my purpose, so that students after me do not suffer as much as I did. Hopefully not as much, or hopefully none at all, because again, I want to pave that route for them, for everyone, and even for our colleagues as well. Yes, sir. Oh, you're muted.
I thought I hit it, but all right. I just wanted to ask you about your early experience as a child. I think you said you got into a school for the deaf. Where was that? Was that
Well,
in?
my parents, no, I did not go to deaf school because my family refused. They refused for me to learn how to sign. They threw me into a hearing world because in Hispanic culture, disability is viewed as a failure. And so we usually get hidden in Hispanic culture. We're not proudly on display. So my parents forced me to encapsulate everything here. And so I took speech therapy. I took all kinds of interventions. I required hearing aids from a very young age and such. And I embraced it. But what got me through this was the music itself, the vibrations through music, playing piano, playing trumpet, and just the way it felt. And I learned to speak that way. Again, this did not come easy for me either. I am an anomaly. Deafness is a spectrum, like autism is a spectrum, and disabilities are all kinds of spectrums. Some are more severe than others, and a lot of it depends heavily on the amount of interventions you get. I'm a firm believer in early intervention for as young as you can, because while it does not cure me, it does improve the quality of my life. If you hear me talk Spanish, you can tell speech therapy did not work very well on there, and that's okay because I can't hear certain phonetics on there, certain vowels. If you've ever been to speech pathology therapy, you know, you talk about the ba, pa, ka, and you feel the syllables in your mouth and you replicate those sounds. And so I can't do that in Spanish with the rolled R and la ñ and other phonetics in there. So I get stuck. And I even stutter sometimes too. If you hear that I'm slurring, sometimes my words is because I get tired, and it's hard when you talk a lot and such, but it's not because I can't hear certain vowels, so it starts to smooth out. That's my phonetics getting in the way of talking and such. But there's so much I can tell you, and there's so many things I can explain. But no, unfortunately, I did not go to deaf school. I wish I did sometimes, but sometimes, you know, were dealt with. Yeah.
I apologize if I misunderstood that,
No.
but mainly I wanted to connect the dots a little bit. Have you heard of a school for the deaf in San Antonio called Sunshine Cottage?
Yes, I am aware of the program director in San Antonio. We have kept in touch. I've met some wonderful people in Texas at FMEA. So, and a colleague of mine, Adam Kita, who taught in San Antonio, we presented together. I found him in my first section at FMEA, TMEA, and we're like, dude, we're collaborating. You don't have a choice. We're going. So I took him to Midwest with me, and I took him back to San Antonio, and we went to Colorado. He's going to pursue his doctoral studies now next year. So I'm little slowly but surely collecting all my peoples so that
Well,
we
he's
can
a friend,
navigate.
and Tim and Steve, y'all know him. Adam, he was in the parking lot at BOA or State or
Yes.
something. But Eddie, my dad was actually president of Beaumont Christian Schools. Not Beaumont, good. That was my father-in-law. My dad was president of Sunshine Cottage for about 5 years after he retired. And that is a really cool school who's doing a lot of work for young people who are deaf. And anyway, I was going towards Adam. I didn't know if you had known him or not. I'm glad y'all have gotten together.
Yes. Like I said, this journey took me in places I never thought it would. And it all started with that judge at MPA is telling me I should reconsider my profession with all of that. That's fine. And I've been presenting ever since, but I've Adam's wonderful colleagues, and there's some more out there. We're not alone. And we're here to help you, by the way, not just for deafness, but for inclusion of all. You can look me up. I teach the courses. I study this stuff. My dissertation is going to focus on disability studies and such on there. I advocate because we need a voice. And there aren't too many voices for me. When I go to colleges, there aren't a professor like me. You know, I had a college a rehearsal once somewhere, and I said, anybody ever had a deaf director directing a band? And they're like, no. And I'm like, guess what? Me neither. Anyways, let's go ahead. Let's play down the downbeat. You know, and so yeah, I'm one, but I never had one. So here I am being one. And so if hopefully I become a voice for someone else, right? Because that's my goal for me. If I have to suffer to make a new trail for someone behind me, then I guess that's my role in life. But nonetheless, that's what I do. And I really enjoyed talking to you all this evening. I know I'm out of time, but there's so much I can share and such. And I'd be more than happy to be a resource to anyone. I think Cecilia has my contact that she can share with everybody. And you can find me at the Frost School at the University of Miami. If you're in Miami for a little visit, we'll go for pastelito and croqueticas, and we can always have a conversation and such. And I will be more than happy to be a resource for all of you. But I really enjoyed sharing with you tonight. And anything else, if you have any questions.
We are so blessed that you're so stubborn.
Very.
No, it's really been fantastic having you. I knew that it was going to be, and I'm just so glad that these folks who have become an important part of my life get to be with you tonight. And I hope that all of you take advantage. Eddie means it. If you need something, reach out. If you want to ask him more questions, we'll make sure that you have his contact information. You can also find it on the Frost website. He is a teaching fellow there, and I think they have your bio and email posted. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Just thank you so much, my friend.
Right. I saw a quick comment from Amanda about your hearing aids. We can talk if you ever want to. I can give you all kinds of strategies and adjustments and stuff. I hear you. I no pun intended, but I get it. You know, I understand completely. And for those of you that might be venturing in that route too, and you don't know what to do, let's talk. Let's talk. I got 40 plus years of hearing aid wearing experiences and tweaking that I can talk to you about and stuff to help you do what you need to do and protect your hearing. For the love of God, please put those headphones on and such. Even the new Apple AirPods, by the way, are actually great technology. Dissertation to come. But nonetheless, it has been an absolute pleasure, everyone, and I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you, Eddie. Tim, you want to close things out for us tonight?
Well, this is certainly humbling. Eddie, thank you so much. As always,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You widened our scope, and that's why we have Slam to begin with. And welcome to Slamily. You know, we're going to put you to work again. I hope that will be okay with you.
Anytime.
And to all of you, thank you. I know we're coming around the last curve of this academic year, and it's time to push the pedal down, isn't it? Because the kids will start dragging their feet and so forth. So we got to pull hard to make sure everybody's moving at the right speed and the right tempo for all of us. Cece, it's all yours. Thanks, all of you. Blessings, and take it away, kiddo.
Oh, make it a great week, everyone. Go do something wonderful for your students. Take care of yourselves. Next week, we'll be together for the last time this semester. I know. And it'll just be open mic. We're just going to get together and hang out. So bring a friend. Have a great week, everyone. Thanks again, Eddie.
Thank you. Thank you.